Forestry is defined as the art of science of managing forest land. It believes that forests can be managed rationally over long periods of time according to explicit objectives. It covers the protection of the forest, the growing of trees or silviculture, the continuous production of wood and other products under a principle of sustained yield, watershed management, and the maintenance of all the other ecosystem services and values that forests provide to the people. Evolution of social forestry concepts. Social forestry is a program and a mission which aims at ensuring ecological, economic, and social security to the people, particularly to the rural masses, especially by involving the beneficiaries right from the planning stage to the harvesting stage. The objective of raising fast-growing trees is to meet the basic needs of the poor and landless for fuel, wood, fodder, small timber, green manure, fruits and other raw materials for self-consumption and cottage industries, alleviating poverty and contributing to the development of villages. It involves plantations on degraded forests close to habitations, government and private lands, canal banks, roadsides, on the sides of railway lines, and lands not suitable for agriculture. In the early 1980s, with the financial assistance of the Swiss International Agency for Development and Cooperation (SDC), Social Forestry project was introduced in Tamil Nadu. The farm forestry, which was introduced early in 1960, was amalgamated into the new project. How the social forestry helped in the regeneration of degraded forests, in the generation of employment, and in the easier availability of forest products to the rural population is described in this episode. Widespread loss of tree vegetation in the developing world in the past few decades led to the emergence of social forestry. It was a response to meet the growing scarcity of biomass and to preserve the environment. Several countries in the developing world launched this type of program to meet the demands of an expanding population for fuel, fodder, and timber. Social forestry was new approach to solve the problem of fuel scarcity with the participation of rural people who would plant, tend, and maintain trees by themselves. The species planted would be of their choice. By early 70s, the problem of deforestation and environmental degradation were expressed at international conference at Stockholm during 1972, bringing the sharp focus the changes required in policies towards environment and the crisis of tree depletion. The World Congress in 1978 added the dimension of forestry for the people and by the people. Food and Agricultural Organization also brought the program of forestry for local community development. Although it was recognized at the most forums that local community forestry was the only solution to the problem of tree depletion, but support, both financial and technical, was negligible. It was only in the early 80s that several international organizations and agencies agreed to aid rapid tree development programs. It was felt that by taking up the programs of raising trees, grasses, and fodder in the farmers' own lands, village commons, wasteland, and degraded forests close to habitations, it would be possible to meet the requirement of fuel wood, fodder, small timber for rural housing, agriculture implement, etc. The great Emperor Ashoka is credited to have got planted shady trees and fruit trees along the roadsides for the benefit of travelers. During early period of British rule, need for industrial expansion and communication required timber from the forests. Attempts made by the British were simply to reserve and demarcate forests for their industrial needs. No significance was attached to important role of trees to the local population. The objectives of social forestry. This was adopted by the Commission 1976, were based on the economic needs of the community aimed at improving the conditions of living. The main objectives are maintenance and improvement of forest resources, maintenance of health and vitality of forest ecosystem, maintenance and development of productive functions, that is wood plus non-wood products, maintenance, conservation and improvement of biodiversity, maintenance and improvement of protective functions, that is soil plus water, maintenance of the other functions and socio-economic conditions. Forestry has a set of operational practices to achieve its goal that cover resources and environmental assessment, road building, fire protection, logging, regeneration, planting and other matters. It is commonly undertaken by large organizations, often those of the state, and by individual forest owners and community group. Components of social forestry. The scope or components of social forestry defined by the Commission includes farm forestry, extension forestry, reforestation in degraded forests and recreation forestry. Farm forestry. Farm forestry is the name given to programs which promote commercial tree growing by farmers on their own land. Farm forestry was defined by NCA in 1976 as the practice of forestry in all its aspects in and around the farm or village lands integrated with other farm operations. There had been relentless depletion of forests with an explosion of population and an unabated pressure on the release of forest lands for non-forestry purposes. Moreover, the forests in the vicinity of villages were being subjected to excessive illicit felling by the local population, mainly to meet their requirements of fuel wood. Thus, the land was very rapidly being denuded. It resulted not only in the fast degradation of the environment, but also preventing the rural poor from obtaining their forest-based daily needs of fuel wood, grass, and leaf fodder. In this background, the effects of the social forestry are considered as important. Extension forestry. Extension forestry is the practice of forestry in the areas devoid of tree growth and other vegetation situated in places away from the conventional forest areas with the object of increasing the area under tree growth. It includes the following. Mixed forestry. Mixed forestry is the practice of forestry for raising fodder grass with scattered fodder trees, fruit trees and fuel wood trees on suitable wasteland, panchayat land and village commons. Shelter belts. Shelter belt is defined as the belt of trees and or other shrub maintained for the purpose of shelter from wind, sun, snow, drift, etc. Linear strip plantation. These are the plantations of fast-growing species on linear strip of land. Rehabilitation of degraded forests. The degraded area under forests need immediate attention for ecological restoration and for meeting the socio-economic needs of the communities living in and around such areas. Recreation forestry. Recreation forestry is the practice of forestry with the object of raising flowering trees and shrubs mainly to serve as recreation forests for the urban and rural population. This type of forestry is also known as aesthetic forestry, which is defined as the practice of forestry with the object of developing or maintaining a forest for high scenic values. Benefits of social forestry: increases the supply of fuel wood and fodder, generate rural employment, maintain ecological balance, appropriate use of wastelands, promote village and cottage industries, induce environmental and tree concerns among people, relieve pressures from natural forests, stabilize agricultural production. Main activities and functions. The Department of Social Forestry is entrusted with the assignment of extending forest and green cover in the state, giving thrust to agroforestry besides the development of medicinal plants under the joint forest management programs. The department is to maintain all the assets created under the social forestry project and to create nurseries to produce planting stocks, raise plantations, distribution of plant material to the locals, farmers, government agencies for planting in their fields, premises, with an ultimate goal of screening the state, improving the environment, generating the employment, and conserving the natural forests. The lucid impact of the activities of the Department of Social Forestry is the creation of 8.65 crore plants outside the forests, which bear a volume of 3.02 crore cubic meter with an annual cut of about 10% on a rotation of 12 years, fetches about rupees 1,200 to 1,500 crores annually in the private sector. To meet the above objective, following schemes are in vogue at present. Establishment of nurseries. The department has established nurseries in all the tahsils or districts of the states. In nurseries, improved and better quality planting material is raised in abundance to meet the requirement. From these nurseries, apart from meeting the requirement of various plantation schemes undertaken by the department, the plants are also supplied to the farmers, government agencies on nominal rates. Technical know-how is also imparted to the desirous farmers, public about raising, planting and maintenance. Rehabilitation of degraded forests. Degraded forest areas are closed with fencing and natural regeneration is supplemented by artificial planting. Sometimes nurse crops are planted first to provide shade before the main crop is planted. Thrust remains on the natural and indigenous species. Village woodlots. Village woodlots are planted over unproductive state, revenue, the village common lands. Village woodlots are raised to make villages self-sufficient to fuel wood, fodder and small timber, besides earning money for their involvement in forestry in respect of works. Mainly fodder yielding species, plants of medicinal value and grasses are planted in village woodlots. Soil and water conservation works, wherever necessary, are also executed in the village woodlots. Strip plantations. Strip plantations are raised along side roads, railway line and canals to provide aesthetic beauty, shade to the travelers, pollution control, etc. Silvipasture development. Forest lands, revenue lands, other government lands in the fodder scarce regions are brought under this scheme. Fodder trees and high-yielding grasses like legumes or napier, red clover, etc. are given priority under this scheme to improve the grazing capacity of the pasture lands. Institutional plantation. Tree planting is done on marginal, institutional lands of government offices, institutional premises, schools, colleges, etc. to add to the beauty of the institutions. This way, the Department of Social Forestry is creating the desired level of awareness among the people about the significance and importance of planting trees. The Department of Social Forestry helps to induce community for creating, maintaining and protecting the plantations in the contemplated joint management program. The community participation under JFM had been the central theme for the social forestry. List of services provided. Department provides plans to people at subsidized rates, providing specialized technical know-how in the field of the agroforestry and tree planting, providing employment to the locals by engaging them in plantation initiatives taken up under various schemes, components, feeding and meeting requirements of fruit industry, plywood, board industry and sports industry, providing of firewood, small timber, fodder, grasses and other NTF produce to locals. The interim and final harvest is being shared with the locals through village forest committees in cash or kind. Upliftment of socio-economic conditions of farmers. Environmental improvement. Adding to the aesthetic scenario. Soil and water conservation. Reducing the thrust on natural forests for wood, timber, grazing, etc. Awareness about importance of trees and plantations. Joint Forest Management JFM. What is JFM? Joint Forest Management is an approach and program initiated in the context of the National Forest Policy of 1988, wherein state forest departments support local forest dwelling and forest fringe communities to protect and manage forests and share the cost and benefits from the forest with them. For working in the coordination with the villages, forest committees are constituted. A microplan for development of forests and villages is prepared by the forest department and the forest communities. Along with the protection and development of forests, the main purpose of this plan is to fulfill the forest-based need of the local population like small timber, minor forest produce, fuel wood, leaves, grass, fodder, etc. by regulated use of the forests. In addition, by efforts to increase the agriculture and forest production and processing their produce, employment opportunities are created in the villages so that villagers are dissuaded from illicit felling and encroachment in forests. Attempts are also made to provide for other basic necessities of the villages so that pressure on forest resources is minimized. All non-wood forest produces, minor forest produces, for domestic consumptions is given free of cost to the members of the village forest council subjected to availability. Executive committee sells any surplus quantity. The executive committee distributes the sale proceeds equally among the members of village forest council after remitting 25% to the village forest development fund. The joint account in the name of village forest council is opened in local or nearest bank or post office with the president and member secretary as signatories. All the village forest council funds are kept in this account. The president and member secretary are responsible for and accountable for the village forest committee for all the financial transactions. Why JFM? India has a long history of local use and protection of forests. The oldest examples perhaps are of sacred groves, which are in indigenous community approach for protecting patches of forest for a variety of ecosystem services. Many communities have historically protected local forests. Revenue systems reserved uncultivated areas as common lands, which included both grazing and forest lands. The Forest Conservation Act 1980 was an important step towards conservation of forests by controlling their use for non-forestry purposes. However, it was being continuously felt that the conservation and development of forests was not possible without the active participation of people in forest management. Forests provide numerous services such as environmental and ecological stability necessary for human sustenance. Wood is a versatile product upon which many industries are based. Railways, housing, furniture, pulp and paper, rayon, fiber, packaging, particle boards, plywood, carved wooden articles, wooden utensils, safety matches, etc. Industries are mainly dependent on forests for the supply of raw materials. Wood is a main source of energy for cooking food in rural areas. Similarly, forests are indispensable for soil and water conservation and environmental and ecological stability of any area. Thus, the forest resources play a significant role in economic development of a country. The development of forests is an integral part of the programs for optimum land utilization. The forests are indispensable for the development of modern economy, including the rural economy of India. The total forest area in India is 67.42 million hectares, which constitutes about 22% of the total area of the country. However, the area under forest is unevenly distributed over different regions in the country. More than 75% of the forest area is located in peninsular India, including the eastern and western Ghats. Himalaya accounts for about 20%. Forests are mainly concentrated in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Assam, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and Orissa. The forests in India are characterized by immense biotic pressure, low productivity, and acute degradation. The recorded legal forest area in the country is 7,65,210 square kilometers, 22.42% of geographical area of the country, while the statistically analyzed forest cover is 6,39,600 square kilometers, which is about 19.47%. However, only 3,85,756 square kilometers, which is 11.73%, has good forest cover of over 40% crown density. The open forest is about 2,49,311 square kilometers, which is about 10 to 40% density. The per capita availability of forest land is one of the lowest in the world, that is 0.08 hectare against the world average of 0.64 hectares. Over half of the livestock population graze in the forests. Forests provide fodder to livestock, fuel, and timber for rural population, and they protect soil from erosion. Forests contribute 7% of the GDP of the country. However, it excludes the value of numerous non-market and external benefits and the vast amount of fuel wood and fodder collected, or the fuel wood and the timber harvested illegally. Collection of various non-wood forest products value by villagers is not recorded fully. By considering these values, the contribution of forests to GDP would have been higher than that is recorded. However, human activities and to some extent natural factors are causing the degradation of the forests. Summary: forestry is defined as the art and science of managing forest land. Social forestry is a program and a mission which aims at ensuring ecological, economic, and social security to the people, particularly to the rural mass, especially by involving the beneficiaries right from the planting stage to the harvest stage. The objective of raising fast-growing trees is to meet the basic needs of the poor and landless for fuel wood, fodder, small timber, green manure, fruits and other raw materials for self-consumption and cottage industries, alleviating poverty and contributing to the development of villages. It involves plantation on degraded forests close to habitation, government and private lands, canal banks, roadsides, on the sides of the railway lines and lands not suitable for agriculture. The scope or components of social forestry defined by the Commission includes farm forestry, extension forestry, reforestation in degraded forests and recreation forestry. Joint forest management, popularly known as JFM, is an approach and program initiated in the context of the National Forest Policy of 1988, wherein state forest departments support local forest dwelling and forest fringe communities to protect and manage forests and share the cost and benefits from the forests with them. For working in the coordination with the villages, forest committees are constituted. Forests contribute about 7% of the GDP of the country. Thank you.